Hello, I'm Ellen Barrio with Barrio's Books and Associates. My topic is people who throw stones at others. Jesus said, "He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone at her." The story is a woman is to be put to death by stoning. She has been charged with adultery. Her accusers, the scribes, and the Pharisees have brought her to Jesus. They told him she was caught in the act of committing adultery, further stating, Moses in the law commanded that such should be stoned. They asked Jesus, "What say you?" He answered them with this statement, "He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone at her." The people left without condemning the woman. The woman could not be condemned to be put to death for committing the sin of adultery because her accusers were sinners. Those who were ready to condemn her were said to have been convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. Before Jesus dismissed the woman, he said to her, "Woman, where are those who have accused you? Has any man condemned you?" The woman said, "No man, Lord." And Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." And Jesus said to the people who had come in great numbers to hear him teach, "I am the light of the world. He that follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life." Source for this reading is chapter 8 of John, verses 3 through 12. The scribes and the Pharisees opposed Jesus' teaching. The scribes were professional people who were educated in the study of the Mosaic law. Their position was to transcribe it and write commentaries on it. Some of them were Pharisees. The Pharisees were a religious and political party that represented their views and practices. Jesus said to the Pharisees, "You judge after the flesh, I judge no man." That is John chapter 8, verse 15. When people use the laws to represent their personal and religious views, the laws become weak and do not represent all of the people. Instead, the laws are biased and discriminate against certain groups of people. One of the weakest parts that I noted about this law, one of its weaknesses, is that men were not condemned if they committed adultery. But the same law, carried the death penalty for women who commit adultery. Jesus' purpose for coming to earth was not to judge the people based on the laws of the land. All people will stand before God and receive the final judgment that will determine where he or she will spend eternity. We understand that it will be either heaven or hell. Only God can determine which place to send each person he will judge. Here's another story. Jesus is present at an eat-out, and one of the guests is a woman who the host condemned for being a sinner. When the lady who is described as a sinner heard that Jesus would be attending the eat-out at the house of Simon, a Pharisee, she came to the gathering with an alabaster box of ointment. She approached Jesus and washed his feet with her tears and dried them with her hair, then anointed them with the ointment. Simon was looking on, and when he saw this, he condemned Jesus and the woman by thinking within his mind, "This man, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman this is that touches him, for she is a sinner." Jesus knew Simon's thoughts, and he said to him, Simon, I have somewhat to say to you. There was a certain creditor which had 2 debtors. The one owed him 500 pence, and the other 50. And when they had nothing to pay, he frankly forgave them both. Tell me, which of them will love him most? Simon answered, I suppose he to whom he forgave most. Jesus said to Simon, You have rightly judged. And Jesus turned to the woman and said to Simon, See you this woman? And Jesus said to Simon, I entered into your house. You gave me no water for my feet. But she has washed my feet with tears and wiped them with the hairs of her head. You gave me no kiss. But this woman, since the time I came in, has not ceased to kiss my feet. My head with oil you did not anoint, but this woman has anointed my feet with ointment. Wherefore I say to you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, the same loves little. And he said to the woman, Your faith saved you. Go in peace. The source for this reading is found Luke chapter 7, verses 36 through 50. Note Simon's attitude. Simon had a self-righteous attitude. The Apostle Paul's description of those who condemn others is, For I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge, for they being ignorant of God's righteousness, and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. That is found in Romans 10, verses 2 and 3. As I said, Simon was a self-righteous person. He had and others had condemned this woman as a sinner. And he also condemned Jesus, because he criticized Jesus. And the story here is a revengeful hate caused a murder to be committed. Herodias, the wife of King Herod, she hates John the Baptist and wants him killed for condemning her marriage to King Herod, who is her brother-in-law. She would have killed John herself, but she could not. John the Baptist is a prisoner of King Herod. King Herod ordered John the Baptist to be captured and bound in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife. Now John had said to King Herod, It is not lawful for you to have her. And when he would have put John to death, he feared the multitude because they counted John as a prophet. That's found Matthew chapter 14 and verse 3. Now King Herod himself is said to have feared John, knowing that he was a just man and holy, and observed him. And when he heard him, he did many things and heard him gladly. Now that's found Mark chapter 6 and verse 20. Now, unlike his wife, he didn't hate John, but everything he did it for his wife's sake. But as you can see here, he had respect for John. Now, Herodias has a plot to have John the Baptist killed. Now, when a convenient day came, which was King Herod's birthday, he made a supper for his lords, high captains, and chief estates. High society people were there. For entertainment, the daughter of Herodias danced. Her performance was magnificent, so much to the fact that it pleased the king and his guests. So the king got all excited because she impressed his guest. So he swore to her, Whatsoever you shall ask me, I will give it to you unto the half of my kingdom. The young lady consulted with her mother, Herodias, for advice of what she should ask the king for. Her mother advised her to ask the king to give her the head of John the Baptist. So the young lady returned to the king very abruptly and said, I will that you give me by and by in a charger the head of John the Baptist. Although the king was said to be exceedingly sorry, yet for his oath's sake and for their sake which sat with him, he would not reject her. This is pride. This is pride. Pride would just not let people do the right thing. And immediately he sent an executioner and commanded John the Baptist's head to be brought. And John was beheaded while in prison. And his head was brought in a charger and given to the young lady, who gave it to Herodias, her mother. No doubt she felt very important to her mother because she granted her mother request. But all three people were wrong in what they did. Luke 6, chapter 37, verse. These are the words of Jesus Christ. He said, Be ye therefore merciful, as your Father also is merciful. Judge not, and you shall not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Forgive, and you shall be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given to you. Good measure, pressed down and shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that you meet withal, it shall be measured to you again. Note, the king, like many others, have committed wrongful acts because of pride. He had a choice to show mercy to John by refusing to kill him. But because of his pride, he used his power to please others in order to make himself appear to be a man who honors his word, even when his judgment is wrong. He had an innocent man put to death. That is a sinful act. Behavior that displeases God is written by King Solomon, describing the things that God hates. And one of the things he talks about is in regards to pride. And he goes on to say that God hates a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked imagination, feet that be swift and running to mischief, a false witness that speaks lies, and he that sows discord among brethren. And he goes on to tell us that there is a generation that is pure in their own eyes and yet is not washed from their filthiness. And we're talking about these self-righteous people that like to throw stones at others. And then he says, there is a generation, oh, how lofty is their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. He tells us again, there is another generation. In this generation, he says, there's a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor from off the earth, and the needy from among men. This is found in Proverbs chapter 6, verses 17, 18, and 19, and Proverbs chapter 30, verses 12 through 14. Now, let's think about the people that we have been talking about here. Now, let's take a look at character assassination. And let's take this apart. Everything we just read, we're going to take it apart, and we're going to analyze it here. Character assassination. A proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, and heart that devises wicked imagination, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaks lies, and he that sows discord among brethren. Character assassination can prevent people from living a positive and comfortable, peaceful lifestyle. The victim of character assassination suffers from a mental and physical attack that destroy their credibility and reputation. Once false rumors are out, especially over the internet, word travel faster nowadays over the internet. You travel around the world over the internet. False rumors spread fast. They are done intentional to ruin a person's credibility and destroy their reputation. Hate is at the root of such behavior. Now that's under character assassination. Condemnation and acts of violence committed against others. This is the generation that appear in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. We talked about the self-righteous. People who throw stones at others are certain groups of people who have taken the position to judge and condemn others for what they believe to be sinful acts they committed that requires punishment. They are not concerned about their own sinful behavior. They are self-righteous in their belief that they are better than those who they condemn. And then we're told there's a generation whose teeth are as swords and their jaw teeth as knives to devour the poor off the earth and the needy from among men. Listen, people. Listen carefully. If laws are put in place based on religious and personal beliefs of certain people to disallow all people from receiving the same protection under the same laws, these laws by religious and personal belief will weaken or to eliminate laws that are presently in place that relates to our civil rights, equal rights, human rights, women's rights, and other rights that includes the rights of all people, everybody's rights, including animal rights. We need to strengthen the law that we have, not weaken them, but strengthen them for those people who believe that they are doing God's service by creating these laws. Carefully think what we just read and go back and read your Bible. From John the writer of Revelation, John says, "Who shall not fear you, O Lord, and glorify your name? For you only are holy, for all nations shall come and worship before you. For your judgments are made manifest." This is Revelation 15:4. Jesus' description of God is this. Jesus described God as Father, Lord of heaven and earth. And he said to the people, "Fear him, which after he has killed, has power to cast into hell." This is found Luke 10:21 and Luke 11:5. The conclusion: God has not given a human being the authority to condemn other human beings for the sins they commit, or to put human beings to death based on religious or personal belief. Jesus gave an example of certain people who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. He says, 2 men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, "God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, executioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in a week. I give tithes of all that I possess." And he was just lifting himself up, praying and telling God how good he is, judging himself, which no person can do. And the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes to heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, "God be merciful to me, a sinner." Jesus further states, "I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalts himself shall be abased, and he that humbles himself shall be exalted. When you exalt yourself in the eyes of God, he's going to bring you down low, because God is not acceptable of such behavior. We all must consider ourselves as sinners. This source is found Luke 18 chapter and verses 9 through 16. People who throw stones at others are certain groups of people who have taken the position to judge and condemn others for what they believe to be sinful acts that certain people have committed that requires punishment by laws. And you know, some of these people have taken it on themselves, and some will still do, put certain people to death who they feel is not worthy to be living. That's the desire to defile the poor off the earth. Those who condemn John the Baptist accuse him of being possessed with the devil. And Jesus was falsely accused of being an alcoholic and condemned for being a friend of publicans and sinners. That's found Luke chapter 7, verses 33 and 34. Jesus advised every person regarding condemnation of others. He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone. In this particular case, he was talking about a woman, but we can also know that he meant any person, both male or female. We're not supposed to condemn others. We're not supposed to have anybody put to death because of what we believe is a sinful act, because we're all sinners. We're all sinners, just like the man prayed, Lord, I am a sinner. I am a sinner. We must not let people tell us who we are. Our position is to ask God for his forgiveness each day, because we live in a body that is subject to sin. None of us are above sin. We've all sinned and come short of the glory of God. God's vessel. This is my gift to you today. I wrote this, and you can have this. If you like this, you can just write it down. I wrote this for a purpose, to know that when I'm going through struggles, I'm being molded. God's vessel. When God has finished molding me, I will be a beautiful vessel in his hands. I will be stronger and wiser. I will be better than I was before. I will be pleasing to him. He will look upon me with his love and smile. My tears are those of joy. I'm Ellen Barry with Barry Books and Associates.